Good to be with you, Tom McDermott, and look who's with me this morning.
I'm back. Like a big, what's it called? Like a bad penny.
I
I'm back.
didn't think of you as a bad penny. Yeah. No. Anyway, she's back with us, and I know a lot of you enjoyed it when we had our conversations. But we're here because the CTL had a reservation already pre-reserved for that space, and so we'll have a couple of those this summer. But I thought this would be fun to have a conversation with you the way we used to do.
Right.
And we were thinking back now that we're moving out of this pandemic and into sort of some kind of new normalcy. We thought it'd be fun to look back at where we were, back at the beginning of all of this. I've got a clip.
You've got a clip of, a year ago?
A little more than, about 14 months ago or so.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's back when we got started.
I think at that point we were still in shock that we might be doing this for 3 more weeks.
That's right.
Remember?
I remember thinking 6 weeks, just how long?
6 weeks is ridiculous.
Yeah, so here we are back in 2020, back in April, I believe is when this one was. So.
Okay. You did that on purpose.
I did. Some of you will remember the difficulty, of course, we had adjusting to this new kind of way of being and the technology issues. There were some Sundays you'd click on and we just wouldn't be there.
We wouldn't be there.
You know, or it would just go, it would just shut down like that. But
once you started and it just clicked off, didn't it?
Yeah. So,
okay.
But here, I really did want to take us back and see where we were. We did this series. It was called Control Alt Delete. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And that was back in April and May.
Okay. Which would have been, we started that right after Easter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were talking about our pre and post pandemic selves. And Lynn and I were thinking that wouldn't it be good to look back at these questions we were asking, even thinking it was only going to be a few months at most.
At most.
And then and thinking about, well, what would we be? Would we have this kind of reset? And so now we thought we'd show a clip and take a look at some of the questions we were asking and see where we are now. Did we deal with it?
Well,
we dealt with
where
a lot.
were we then? Where are we now? And what do we need to be doing?
Yeah. So we'll just look at this clip. Thank you for looking at it with us. And so it just came up. This is feeling, it's feeling strange and anxious, you know. And I just said, wait a minute, are we at Hump Day? Are we even at the midpoint?
Yeah, I need to feel like it's at least Hump Day.
You get such mixed messages.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find a horizon as you can see where this might be going.
Yeah, where are we?
And you started sharing with just what you're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, a constant feeling of disorientation. I started out being busy. I had my to-do list, and I got some things done. But busyness wasn't satisfying, and I've got my work to do, and that's satisfying, but there was something else. And finally, I think I hit upon it. I read a quote, and it said, sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes in the middle of nowhere, we find ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the middle of nowhere, we find ourselves. I feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere, and the question that was being sort of gnawing at me, this feeling I had that something was inviting me towards something, had to do with discovering something deeper in me, in our society, in our culture.
Because when we were talking, I mean, I have similar feelings, but I also have this sense of guilt.
Do you?
I really do. I have a sense of shame, a kind of guilt. There's so much tension and stress and death and suffering that's on the front line.
Right.
Our nurse care friends, our healthcare friends and doctors that we know that are sharing with us, you know, you don't see it out here. But you know, walking
in our neighborhood, right.
But it's there, and it's overwhelming. And I feel like I know we're doing good stuff, and yet still I know there's people on the front line. That's kind of a reality that we're in that we don't always see so well. There are families struggling with their kids, and we're in the 4th, 5th, 6th week, and you know, trying to fit a square peg into a hole.
Right, with the kids at home.
Making school at home and life at home and couples or living alone at home.
Right.
Which is such an abnormal. It's like we're trying to make the abnormal normal. The impossible something that's possible.
And I think that very thing is what it felt like it was gnawing at me. Don't try to make it something it's not. It is abnormal. and abnormal is raising a question.
So this quote that you came across, that you shared with me, say it again, because it really...
Sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the middle of nowhere, we find ourselves. And if we don't honor this, Rob Bell calls this a time of Sabbath.
Right. So
Sabbath season, and we need to honor that.
Well, that quote got me thinking about something that happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
with the computer,
Right.
with my computer.
Right.
And it's been happening at all of our Zoom sessions now, because I'm in all these different Zoom
Right.
meetings. And right in the middle of the meeting, the Wi-Fi goes out. It's not because the Wi-Fi goes out, my computer goes out.
Yeah, it's not. It's just your
It's
computer.
just my computer. And there's nothing there. There's nowhere to access Wi-Fi. So I found out online, here's how you fix this. You hit Control, Alt, Delete, and then you hit the off button.
Yeah.
And then it shuts the computer down.
Okay.
Then you hit the power button. Computer comes back up.
It restarts.
The screens are all back up, and it restarts.
Same
and
place.
There's the Wi-Fi, right
Yeah.
back where it should be.
And then
it breaks again.
it goes out again.
Not
because
immediately.
Nothing's changed.
There's no pattern. It just stops because nothing's changed. The computer's still the same computer.
So whatever's broken in the system isn't being addressed.
Right. And the resurrection narrative begins with Shalom.
Wow. Yeah.
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 So where else does this happen then?
Think about before Jesus is crucified and he's talking to his disciples about his upcoming death, he says, "Peace I leave with you, my own peace I give to you." In other words, I'm leaving you with and bequeathing to you this mission of shalom.
Yeah.
And then, the last days of Jesus was he's going into Jerusalem and he looks out over the city.
Powerful.
And he weeps.
Powerful.
And he said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that I might gather you as a hen gathers her chicks, because you still do not know the ways that make for peace."
For
or
shalom.
Shalom.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I love that you said that. That idea, shalom is the trajectory of God. It's the sort of the purpose of the kingdom.
It is.
It's what the kingdom is all about. Is
Right.
this shalom and right relationship? And we were saying how we say this every Sunday in traditional church, the passing of the peace, and in 11:11 we greet one another. But essentially, that's what we're saying. Don't forget who we are. Yeah.
And why you're here.
Why we're here.
Yeah.
And what'd you say? This is how we invest ourselves.
Actually, yeah. I mean, if your life is invested in something, and I'm not sure we always ask the question, what am I investing my life in?
Yeah.
And if we begin to just make that our mantra, we're investing our life in shalom.
Right.
And that begins then, we begin that by seeking to be in right relationship with one another.
And that building analogy.
With God, with you.
Right, love
with
your
the
neighbor.
creation.
This great commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Love God with all your heart. That's the path of being in right relationship. I love that building analogy, because think about it. The way the way everything connects. What happens if that relationship of one piece to another is not solid?
Well, it's destabilizing. Can I give an example?
Yeah.
I was reading a book about, and it included a section on the building of the Eiffel Tower, and it said at the bottom of the Eiffel Tower, if the structure was like a millimeter off at the bottom, by the time it got to the top, the whole building would slant and it would be destabilized.
Oh wow!
So how important it was that your foundation is right.
Which is
because it's destabilizing. It won't sustain.
Yeah, and that really gets to, essentially that also gets to how we're in right relationship with ourselves, with the depth of the very deep of ourselves. Call it the ground of our being, call it our connectedness with life at the very ground of our being.
I hadn't thought about that, but when we're not, we are on the verge of we're destable.
Yeah, you can almost think of
unstable.
You can almost think, we're a little bit riffing here, but you can almost think of when we are moving about our daily routine, how many times we are thrown off balance. You can almost think of that,
works,
right?
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Somewhere at work, somewhere on the phone with someone, somebody says you've got to go talk to this person, and you're going I don't like that person. How many different ways?
Then you access your foundation.
You have to
go back to
Yes.
the
You
foundation.
have to go back to your center, to your connectedness with your own sense of deep acceptance, and recognizing that deep acceptance of all of us, and operate out of that place
Oh, wow.
to be in right
'Cause
relationship.
if you don't, this is where we see people wrestling with anxieties and depression. And,
Yeah.
I mean, some of that's chemical. I'm not trying to say that, but in essence, a lot of what we struggle with
Right.
is because we have not gone back to our foundation and accepted the accepting.
That
What
acceptance.
did you say?
That acceptance. That idea that we are accepted, we are loved, but that same love and acceptance is for everyone. It's for all things. God is a part of all of that. And we forget that because we're identity oriented, identity politics, identity thoughts, whatever, religion,
It's about
my
me.
opinion versus your opinion.
It's me. My ego is right
To
there.
be in right relationship is to let go of that, but to remember we are grounded in this love, and so is everybody else. And then from that
That's
point,
where it gets hard.
that's where it gets hard.
You know what? I think the hardest verse in the Bible is when Jesus said, "Wherever two or more of you are gathered." 'Cause I'm pretty okay on my own.
What did the Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, say? The great anthropologist. He said, "It takes two to know one."
Oh.
Did it? It takes two to know one. In other words, we don't know ourselves without relationship. And to do that, we have to be in that kind of right place, that place that says, I depend on you, you depend on me, let's get past the differences and remember we are grounded in the same reality.
Yeah, but we make a lot of assumptions. So you and I on the way over here were talking about critical race theory.
Yes.
So,
and that's the new struggle, I think, for us now as we move past Black lives. What were you going to say then?
Just asking you, because I'm still kind of learning what that entails, but my vague understanding is at the bottom of that means I really need to hear a story that maybe I've never listened to before, or acknowledge that what I have heard and what I've made assumptions about may not be inclusive of perspective that's quite important.
Right. Our history we understand from our perspective, and oftentimes history is what history is recorded by those in power. It's written by those in power.
So even if it could be race, and it is, it's also socioeconomics.
Socioeconomic, and social, just in general, cultural. It's written from those who sort of have the power or the predominant viewpoint. And so, we're in Pride Week.
Yeah.
We're in Gay Pride Week, and just, it occurred to me there's so much I don't know about the history of that experience and its struggle. It was 1996, I think, when the law was passed that you can't discriminate based on sexual identity. And so, there's so much we don't know about that history unless we had lived in the midst of that.
And things that I just take for granted, and then I'm maybe with one of my gay or lesbian friends, and something comes up, and I suddenly hear, it never occurred to me that might be really difficult for you.
Yeah.
And so, what's that called? Being woke?
Being woke, yeah.
Sometimes it's more like a big slap in the face.
Still mostly asleep here.
Yeah.
But we'll put up on the screen here also a couple of resources that I recently came across that some friends shared in terms of pride, queer awareness, being more aware of queer history and issues. I think the same was true with Black Lives Matter, right? How many reading groups that we got involved with just to begin to open up our awareness so that we understand. And critical race theory is really about how we introduce that at the very ground level of our learning. A wider understanding of historical perspective. And
you know what? I forgot who said it, but they said a long time ago, to listen is to love.
Yes. I think
listen
Viktor
is
Frankl
to
and
love.
Martin Buber both were people who said listening is perhaps one of the most sacred acts.
Wow, yeah.
But listening requires listening for understanding. Not listening just so I can hear you talk until I can talk, or approaching you from my own perspective. Listening to understand.
That's a developed skill.
Right relationship
I really
means
have to work on that one.
Get out. In some sense, it means get out of the way, but in another sense, it means connect. At that deeper place. So, well, I mean, where are we then? How far have we come? Right? I think the door's just been cracked open.
It's been a little over a
year. There's been a lot of tragedy and a lot of pain, and a lot of loss in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, some of us have come out. We acknowledge a lot of us have come out of this with a wound that we didn't have before. A lot of us have come out with an insight that we didn't have about ourselves or about others. And a lot of us have been woke, at least a little bit, in some regards, but the work is not over. So the whole reference to, wow, it's nice to just go back to the way things were, it's just not true.
Right.
We are not now who we were then.
I think...
And this is the opportunity.
Right. That's what I was going to say too. I think what we have to take from where we are at this point, 14 months later, is we're still not in our post-pandemic self, because we're going to be looking back 5-10 years from now and go, oh, that's what our post-pandemic self looked like. But I think our invitation now is to, 2 ears, 1 mouth, spend a lot more time listening. Listening with deep intention for this path of shalom.
There is a saying in Celtic theology that has to do with listening for the heartbeat of God.
Oh yeah.
And if you think about the shared heartbeat of all living things,
I love that.
Then to listen, and to listen deeply, like you were talking about, has to do with listening for the heartbeat or the common human living being connection that we have with one another, with the created world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Listening for the heartbeat of God. I love that. That's a great segue, because Brad and the band have put together a new music video for us for this Sunday. Madas Yahu doing One Day. What a great segue for that. Thank you so much for being with me again and being with us.
It's really good
and
to be here.
Bless you all, and hope that you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.